Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Brooke Destra and the wonderful Taryn Hatcher. And the Flyers are 3-1-0. They rebounded from their 6-1 loss to the Sabres with a 3-0 shutout with 40 saves from Brian Elliott. A very, very good response from the Flyers. And overall, so far, so good. There are concerns, but a lot of positives for the Flyers to start. Brooke Destra, if you had to pick who's been the best player for the Flyers, and there's a good number of selections at our hands here, best player for the Flyers through 4 games, who would it be for you?
I mean, first thing that comes to mind is the guy that's tied for the most points and goals in the league, a.k.a. Travis Konechny.
No.
I feel like he's been doing that even with the hat trick. I feel like he's been quietly very good this season. Not in terms of Philly fans obviously know how good he is, but I feel like media really hasn't been, like outside of Philly, have been discussing him as much as they've been, like Jack Hughes after his huge game last night. So that's pretty exciting that we have a top caliber player right now, points wise. And then I just wanted to shout out Brian Elliott because this is the reason why I wanted them to re-sign him, because if there's you expected him to play in the condensed season, you didn't really anticipate him to have his first start be a 40 save shutout game. So, I mean, way to set the bar, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, there's goaltending controversy now." Like, no. It's not. It's just we have a great starter, and it's great because if Carter Hart is struggling, which is bound to happen because he's so young, Brian Elliott can come in and kind of level the playing field again. And he did just that in last night's win. So really awesome stuff.
We've spoken a lot about the importance of Brian Elliott and how valuable he is to the Flyers. And Tuesday night's victory over the Sabres for the Flyers, that was really case in point. That was a prime example of what he can do when a team gives up 6 goals the night before. Carter Hart is scheduled for his off game, and Brian Elliott comes in there and pitches a 40-save shutout. That is Brian Elliott to a T. It's why he will be so valuable, not only in any season and as a mentor to Carter Hart, but really in this type of season where everything's condensed, it's going to be a bit chaotic, and you really need reinforcements. And Brian Elliott was a reinforcement. Taryn Hatcher, as we know, Sean Couturier is out for a minimum of 2 weeks. Going back to last Saturday, he has a rib injury. For the most part, the Flyers obviously struggled in that 6-1 loss, but they really came back and bounced back with a 3-0 win. If they can weather the storm without Couturier, how big would that be? We do know they've given up 36 shots per game. That is 4th most entering Wednesday in the league. Are you concerned, or you think they can really get by without Couturier and then pick up when he comes back?
I was more concerned before last night's game because even that Penguins game, that second Penguins game, was not a fabulous display of hockey, to say the least. Sorry, it's very cold in my house, so I have a jacket on inside. For those of you listening who can't see, I'm wearing a Canada Goose jacket inside of my apartment. But, yeah, I was really concerned because not only were they giving up shots, they also were not getting off a lot of shots. And that could be an issue, especially like when you play an Islanders team who doesn't give up opportunities anyway. That's something that you have to keep an eye on. A little less concerned after last night's game because the thing that I think people also didn't realize about the Sabres, unless you were watching them or following their storylines before just watching that game, yeah, they lost twice to the Caps, but the Sabres were kind of trending upward as they came into that series with the Flyers. They didn't play a terrible game against the Capitals in their second game against Washington. And the Flyers, I know they beat the Penguins pretty handily in both games, but they were trending downward in terms of their style of play. And Alain Vigneault said it, and the players said it. They said that they were playing a little sloppy. And so I think that loss to the Sabres was a wake-up call that no team really is good enough to play bad hockey and win consistently in this league, especially not in the East Division. So I think people thought the Sabres and the Devils were going to be a lot easier teams to beat than they are. We saw the Bruins lose a game to the Devils last week as well. So this whole division is going to be really competitive. But yeah, to your point about Sean Couturier, it will be interesting now, especially I haven't seen Jordan. You might know more than me because I just got out of a Pilates class, but anything about Morgan Frost and an update on him, but you might be down to Connor Bunnaman now, who is capable. It certainly is reassuring when, Nolan Patrick has not stood out in a bad way in any of these games, really. I've not remarked on him. Like, I've never sat there and be like, "Ooh, Nolan," like that. His time away from the ice has showed. He had a really good game to start the year, the season opener, and then I think it helps them that Kevin Hayes gets a goal last night, even though it's the empty netter at the end, and they can get Claude Giroux and put him at center if they need to, and they can bring in Connor Bunnaman, and they have a lot of guys that are really versatile. Scott Lawton can play a wing or a center. You can toy around with some things. But yeah, I think they can do it, but there's certainly concerns on, this team can't have gaps like they've had in some of these games because other teams will exploit them. And Sean Couturier is one of those guys who really helps close those gaps. It's one of those things where, and I hate to even say it because it goes against everything as people who really know the Flyers well, or the fans that really watch the Flyers a lot. When Sean Couturier scores important goals, but Sean Couturier doesn't always draw your eye in a way that some other flashier centers do. But you realize when he's not there how much you miss him. That's the thing with Sean Couturier. When he's there, he's solid, and then he gets these timely goals or these timely assists. But they're not always it's not like that one Connor McDavid goal in the second game of the season where he turns on wheels and you're like, that man isn't human. They're sometimes greasy goals that Coots works for. But when he's not there, you're just like, wow, that ice looks a lot longer. This team looks a lot more stretched out. And what are we going to do? But they figured it out last night. So more of the same. Not totally figured it out, but they figured it out more. So more of the same is the idea, I guess.
It could have been a lot worse than 2 weeks. So the Flyers will definitely take that. But I had some people telling me during the 6-1 loss to the Sabres that, Couturier wouldn't have done much. This is a team issue. It was a team game. They were a mess all around. But Sean Couturier changes the complexion of the game with the minutes in which he plays and the way in which he plays. Like you said, Taryn, if he's not scoring a goal or setting up a goal, just the style in which he plays, how he can set up possession in the offensive zone, how he's a nightmare to play against in the neutral zone and the defensive zone. Like, he would have changed the way that game looked. Maybe the Flyers wouldn't have won that game. It was 6-1. I'm not saying that, but it would have been a lot less ugly, I would say.
Yeah, and it's imagine this, okay? When you're doing something and it's either, like, for me, it's if like the first night I'm going on air to do pre and post, right? And your heart's racing and you're all over the place and your blood's pumping and you can't seem to get, you're trying to settle down. Sean Couturier is the guy who, when he gets out there, stabilizes things and settles things down, because I think what we saw in that 6-1 loss too was things got unstable for the Flyers and they just never got back on track. And if you can have a Sean Couturier who gets out there and has one shift where you get things back on track, there's very much a ripple effect throughout the team that allows it. I think it's just like last night, the physicality of that game helped the Flyers a lot. You saw one guy make a big hit. You saw another guy make a big hit. All of a sudden, they're very much present and in the moment of each and every single play. And it starts to feel less like this game is bigger than what we're able to handle. Sean Couturier, though, in and of himself, is a player who makes the game feel smaller, more digestible. And I think when a game gets out of hand the way Monday's game does, you need a guy who can reel it in a little bit.
Sports bettors, are you ready? Are you ready for a faster way to win? When you bet with PointsBet, you get faster bets, faster withdrawals, and faster rewards at your fingertips. All on an easy-to-use app. See for yourself why bettors are calling PointsBet innovative, lightning quick, and the reason they have ditched other books. Experience this premium sportsbook for yourself and sign up with the code NBCPOD100 to get $100 in free bets when you deposit $20. That's $100 on your first $20 deposit. So, are you ready? Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All month long, NBC Sports Philadelphia presents Headstrong, Men's Health and Sports Headstrong, a series about men's health told through powerful stories involving the athletes that we love. Learn more on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com/Headstrong. Brooke, Destra, as Taryn mentioned, Morgan Frost injury in Tuesday's game. He was set to undergo an MRI on Wednesday. We're going to find out the results maybe soon, and we'll see his status. Philip Myers, also injured in Tuesday's game, also set to undergo an MRI. We will find out the results soon and see his status. But obviously, Myers goes down with an injury. Frost, we know about Sean Couturier. Shane Gostisbehere has missed the first 4 games because of COVID protocol. Do you feel the Flyers have the depth to make up for these losses if they are gone for an extended period of time?
I mean, they're certainly going to be tested.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that if Connor Bunnaman is the next man to step up. I mean, Kevin Hayes even said it, it's next man up mentality. Bunnaman's a very physical player, and I think that he's somebody who might actually work well right now with the current state of the Flyers. Not that, listen, I'm not pro hockey fighting, but I do like classic hockey. Like, I think the Flyers need to be a little more physical right now. I mean, after Nicholas Aube-Kubel got fined Monday night, the Sabres were headhunting him last night, and I feel like a few of the guys were getting a little frustrated on the ice, but it's like, we need somebody who's going to be like, stop it, stop, because we're going to come after you. And I guess that's probably just me, but I think that Bunnaman, I know people
Scott Hartnell said the same thing, Brooke. No, you're not alone in that. Scott Hartnell said the same thing as you, so keep on going with confidence this time.
Okay. But it's just, they were the Broad Street Bullies years ago for a reason. And I know that they have not been any sense of a bully. They're like, I almost feel like the Glad commercial where it's like stinky, 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 hefty, hefty, hefty. The Flyers have kind of been stinky lately. Like, I want them not bad, but like in a soft term, I guess you could say, because I want more physicality from the Flyers, and I think it's going to benefit them. So Morgan Frost, it's unfortunate because the first few shifts on Monday night, I think he did really well. And then it kind of just fell through the wayside. Like, you saw a few like little glimpses of, okay, he's here, little flashes of, okay, like maybe this will get like the gears going for him. And then it kind of just fell flat. And that's he hasn't had that much time with the Flyers, so he's getting accustomed to it. It's the same thing, you're not going to be annoyed at Nolan Patrick because he hasn't played professional hockey in over a year. They're getting back on their feet. They're getting back on their skates. It's not their fault. It's going to be unfortunate if Frost is out for a significant amount of time. I am way more concerned if Philip Myers is out more, because the blue line, that's going to stress me out more than if Frost is out. And yeah.
Brooke, you haven't loved the D pairs, have you?
No. I haven't.
I was expecting you to sugarcoat that, Brooke.
It's really interesting. And I almost tweeted the other night the one play where Robert Haig actually played well. And I was going to compliment him. And then I was like, no, because people are going to roast me if I compliment him on the podcast. And then, he decided to ice a perfectly playable puck. And then I was like, no, I'm throwing it away. So it's like, you can't just sit here and have to rely on Ivan Provorov and Travis Sanheim. And Sanheim, for the most part, aside from last night, has not been up to par with how you expected him, like right out of the jump of the season. Yes, Myers and Sanheim are really great together, and they've built up a really strong chemistry with one another on the same pair, but I don't think that he's at his, he's not like Provorov level ready start of the season kind of thing. Though I do want to commend him, because as soon as Myers didn't return in the second period, I think Sanheim really stepped up his game. But you can't just sit here and rely on Provorov and Sanheim and then just hope for the best.
Yeah, he's 6 defensemen, and right now it seems like there's 2,
Yeah.
And it's...
Taryn, is this a little bit of a glimpse into life without Matt Niskanen?
Yeah, and it's, Matt Niskanen's another guy who the other night when the game's getting out of control, you go, if Matt Niskanen's here, I don't know that the Flyers win this game, but I think they look a lot better in this game.
Yeah.
Because he's just, like, responsibility flew out the window in that game. It was a very irresponsible game in terms of decision-making and positioning and responsibilities. It was just not there. And obviously that was Matt Niskanen's bread and butter. But yeah, we talked about this on the podcast where the season started. The D pairs were always scary to me because, and I talked to Mike Yeo about it before the first game of the season, and he said, ideally you have what we had last year. You have set roles for guys. You have a top pair, and then having a Sanheim and a Myers, 2 giant bodies who skate really well as your second D pair is huge. And then you have like a Haig and a Braun, and they're stay-at-home guys who, are just going to do what you need them to get done while they're out there. And then 2 minutes later, throw Ivan Provorov and Matt Niskanen out there, and it's a completely different looking game. And it was a really ideal circumstance. That life feels like a long time ago. That's not what's happening now, obviously. The thought is Justin Braun is a stay-at-home guy to allow Ivan to get more offensive. Then I personally have concerns about the 2018-2019 season where Ivan was kind of took a step back from trying to do everything for everyone all the time because, quite frankly, he can. He's blatantly said before, if I could play a 60-minute game and play every minute of the game, I would. I would love to try. Like, that's Ivan. He'll do that, but it sometimes to his own detriment. And they want to keep Myers and Sanheim together because they liked that pairing last year. And they're like, if we can have some stability up and down the D pairs, why not?
Yeah.
Now you have to sit there and think like, okay, well, for the sake of all of the defensive pairings, is that going to work now? Would it make sense to put Sanheim up on a pair with Ivan, or Phil if he's healthy? If Phil's not healthy, and then I guess Mark Friedman's next man up, and he looked good last year. Like when he played, I thought Mark did his job exactly as he should. But it's just all over the place. Like it's just all over the place. And the thought process of having Gustafsson in on offensive draws with Ivan, and then when they're on D draws, putting Braun in, it's a lot of moving parts, and I think this coaching staff is maybe the only coaching staff that could pull it off in the league because of who Alain Vigneault is. But that still doesn't mean it's going to be easy or efficient at first. The other thing to say on the Sanheim thing, and then I'll be done because I'm talking a lot, is if we remember back to last year as well, Sanheim, who is, his skating is phenomenal. It's one of the best parts of his game. He's probably the best skater, one of the best skaters on the team. To say he's the best is big. But even last year to start the year, does anybody remember Sanheim was like toe picking and falling over all the time in bad situations? Like
3 straight games, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seems like sometimes early, like he settles back in and then he gets confident and then he's really good. But I remember last year, like interviewing him in the dressing room one time early in the season, and he wasn't defeated, but you could tell he was down. And it's, I expect Sanheim, as he settles in, will only get better and better and better. But this is like, it's so weird. Monday's game looked like an exhibition game that a coach yells at you after, and probably is what it felt like to most of these guys as well, because there are no exhibition games, and that really does matter. I know they don't play a ton in them, but they had very limited training camp and then we're right in it. And I think some of those games are still going to happen, but winning last night very much makes Monday feel like a bump in the road and not like, oh my gosh, the Flyers have massive problems that they desperately need to address. I can exhale a little bit now.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you also have to look at it as if you were to look on Twitter, you would think that this team was a dumpster fire. But
I know.
They left their first 4 games with 6 points.
Yeah.
And it's like things could be far, far worse.
Well, and it's funny because it's like he's got to blow up all the lines. He's got to blow up all the D pairs. Danny tweeted, he's doing the warm-up yesterday. He's asked about concern after Carter, after a rough outing for Carter. Somebody was like, are you trying to start a goalie controversy? Like, everyone's very on edge, I think, because everyone has such high hopes for this team. And it's not been easy as a Flyers fan in recent memory to have high hopes for your team. So it seems like everyone's a little bit more sensitive to times when they struggle. But even when the Patriots were winning Super Bowl year after year after year, they would like lose a random game to a Miami Dolphins team that sucks. So like this happens in sports. It'll be okay.
Yeah. And again, it's like, sorry, Jordan.
No, you're good. Bro.
If they're taking away 3 out of 4 games at their worst, just imagine what they're going to be like at their best. So It's like, especially playing into the fact that they didn't have a preseason. They only had the intra-squad scrimmage. They went from training camp, like Taryn said, right into really the first game of the season. If this is the product that they're putting out now and they're still finding ways to win, right now that's all that matters. Because as soon as things start clicking and falling into place, then it's going to be, okay, we can sit back, little sigh of relief, things are connecting. The way that they've played, if they're going to trend in the right direction now after last night's win, then I feel like I'll be a little more content, especially with the back-to-back against the Bruins upcoming. But I don't know, there's a lot, not at stake, but it's like, you're kind of sitting on edge right now, what's going to happen next. But I think we're trending in the right direction for sure.
Yes, these are some of the biggest expectations probably in 10 years for the Flyers. So like you both were saying, when you see a 6-1 loss, fans are going to be a little lost for words, and they'll be upset. And I think for me, the one thing that we've noticed since last January, so it's been a year now of this, whenever the Flyers have a clunker, and you're going to have a clunker from time to time, they consistently get right back up on the horse and return to form. And that's a real positive. And for me, with the defensemen, it's real simple. Like, I feel like a microscope is on the D pairs when they're forced to play a lot of defense, when their backs are being turned and they have to play the puck on the back wall, those high pressure plays, when they're constantly in coverage. You put a microscope on defensemen when they're on the rush and joining the play and pinning the opposition back and providing offense. They're playing less defense and everything looks good. So I would love to see the Flyers defensemen provide a little more offense, really be that second wave of offense like they were last year. Last season, only one team provided more goals from the defenseman position. That was the Blues. The Flyers had 44 goals from defensemen. The Blues had 45. Flyers have 1 goal so far from a defenseman through 4 games. I would love to see more offense from the back end, and then they'll be playing less defense, and fans, I don't think, will be noticing as much. So I think we'll see that eventually.
This may come as a surprise, but my family is ready to get out of the house, and I mean out. So I was pleasantly surprised when I found the Vrbo app. It's a vacation rental site that has vacation homes anywhere you want to go, and it's super easy to find the perfect one for the whole family. We knew we wanted to escape the cold and found the perfect beach house that was warm but still drivable. It has a massive outdoor kitchen, a pool, and even a game room to keep the kids occupied and give us a chance to really unwind and relax. You should check out the Vrbo app. Whatever kind of vacation your family needs, they'll have the perfect place. That's Vrbo, VRBO.com. Your together awaits.
Flyers Talk is presented by Wells Fargo. Whenever our communities need us, Wells Fargo is here to help.
So the Flyers are headed to Boston. They will play a 2-game set in Boston, their first road trip of the season, and they will play those Big Bad Bruins. Brooke, we've talked a little bit about concerns here for this team, but like we said, a lot of positives. But if there's one concern for you that maybe sticks out a little bit more than the rest going into Boston for this first road trip, what would it be for you?
Well, while we've been recording the podcast, it looks like the Flyers just sent out a little press release that they've moved defenseman Derek Pouliot from the Phantoms to the taxi squad.
There we go.
So that raises a lot of concern for Phil Myers and how long he may be out. It may be a safety protocol. It may be a few games, but I mean, already being down Sean Couturier, you don't know how long Frost is going to be out. I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to play the injury card. Next man up mentality is obviously what you have to do. You're not just going to sit there and whine and be like, okay, well, that's not fair. We're down this and this player. But it seems like we may be without Myers for at least the series against Boston. And just on top of that, it's maybe shifting environments for the first time this season. The Flyers, for the first time, and I don't know how long, played their first 4 games at home. And I think maybe the level of stabilization was great for them to kick off the season, but now it's throwing like, hey, go travel. And some guys may like it. Some people like playing on the road. It's not going to be that difficult, obviously, because you're not going to be playing in front of Boston fans. But it's the change of environment, being down players. It's kind of a lot of basic things, but when they're small fundamental pieces starting to add up, then it raises that level of concern. Plus, I'm sitting here and hoping for the vets to kind of step up. And I don't think, again, it's, I want to sit here and call them out. It's not time for that. It's way too early in the season, but your top guy is out. You're going to need more people to step up. You have Konechny stepping up. First of all, that Lindblom, Patrick, Konechny line is really freaking fun. That's one line that I do not want touched until they're struggling. Right now they're buzzing. They're probably the most entertaining line. Although that fourth line's pretty exciting too.
That fourth line is very good. That fourth line
line is really like another third line, and that's
they've looked
nice.
Like their most skilled line at times too, which is like when Scott Lawton and Michael Raffle and Nico Bay-Kubel are putting together the prettiest sequences on your team. If everybody else is playing great, that's dope. When other people aren't, you're like, what is going on? Because that one goal that Michael Raffle had against Pittsburgh, other than Konechny's goal, that Oscar's pass off the boards last night, I think that Michael Raffle goal was the prettiest goal the Flyers have so far. But go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're good. It's one of those things. Like, I would really like Drew to step up. I know JVR had a few really good chances the last 2 nights, but it's like that. Like, you need him to start connecting. And again, it's too early in the season. I don't want anybody to attack me because I'll go to bat for these guys any day. But it would be nice to see now, since we're kind of getting into the groove of the season.
Yeah, any line that's kind of caught your eye that you're saying don't break that up. Obviously, they had to shuffle it up a good bit in Tuesday's win. But I have a feeling that line of Konechny, Lindblom, Patrick won't be changing for the Boston set.
Yeah, I really like Konechny, Lindblom, Patrick. I really like we talked about it on last night's postgame show. That pass from Oscar to lead Travis like that is exactly the kind of play that made everyone say this kid has an outstanding hockey IQ to begin with, which when he was really kind of blossoming and starting to stand out for the Flyers at the start of last year, that hockey IQ was on full display. Those were the types of things that he could do that you just sat there and had to, clap for. I other than that, the fourth line, I love that Scott Lawton, Michael Raffel, Nico Bay-Kubel. The thing is that they are guys who can grind down other players. They are physical. They're giving you what you want out of a fourth line. They're also scary in a good way. You know, you don't sit there and you're like holding your breath because the fourth line's out there and hoping that there's not going to be an issue. And at times that hasn't always been the case, not for those specific players, but for the team. There was obviously last year, there was like musical chairs who's going to be the 4C for the Flyers at times for months at a time last season. And when you have, like, Scott Lawton could be a top 6 player. Scott Lawton could play on a line in the top 6 with any other line on this team, and he would add positives to it. Like, even that, I mean, if you put if you put Scott on a line with Oscar and Travis, the line would look good because Scott's a good player and he sees the ice really well. So to have him up against, you know, another team's fourth line at times, and it's him and it's Michael Raffel, who everyone said that I talked to in the offseason said Michael Raffel's going to come into this season and he's going to be ripped. Like, he said he's just going to take the offseason, get shredded, come back in super good shape. That seems to be the case. And Nico Bay-Kubel has really kind of blossomed into a solid guy. I like that fourth line together. I just want to see Claude Giroux get a goal. Like, I just want to see Claude Giroux get a goal. It's not the question you asked, but it's the one thing where last night I'm like, okay, Jake gets his goal. We need Jake to get a goal now, because I think once those floodgates open, we're looking at a different team. You know, you're seeing Kevin Hayes gets the empty netter, but for Kevin, that's a good thing. It's something that matters. You look at the score sheet, that matters. It matters. And, you know, TK's obviously running hot right now. I want to see how things are moved around in order to get Claude going, because I feel like he wants it too. Like, I feel like he came into this year hungry, and we can say it a million times. And until people put up goals and assists, it's, you know, it seems like it's worthless to say, but I just want to see Claude like rip off a crazy point streak. And I think it could happen. It'll be interesting to see what that line around him looks like. You know, him and a Kevin Hayes. And did they have Joel on that line at one point last night with Hayes and Giroux, or was that just a line change that Joel got stuck out on the ice for?
I believe Joel was with was he with Voracek, and man, they shuffled it up so much. Listen,
I know. At one point I looked up. I was taking notes for Intermission Live, and I look up and I'm like, that's an 8. That's an 8-6 on that jersey, which is Joel Farabee.
What? It was because Frost was with JVR and Giroux. We know the third that other line, so it definitely was Farabee, Voracek, and Hayes.
Yeah. I feel like Hayes and Joel I've really liked at times. I think that Joel has set up Kevin in a way that works for the two of them really well.
Yeah.
Part of me like kind of wants to see what G looks like on that line. I don't know if it would work. Elaine Vigneault does not care about what I have to say, but I'd be so curious just to check it out. I don't know. Who knows? They're going to have to make a ton of moves here. So,
yeah.
I don't know, Jordan. What do you think?
Well, moves are probably coming, but I guess we'll just see. We don't know the extent of these injuries. But for me, all the juggling with the forward lines, every time they put a line together, they're so deep that I'm typically like, you know what, I can see it. Like, I kind of like that combination, and I kind of like that combination. Like, they're that deep that I like all the combinations. I can see it working. And I think we have said how much the Flyers like that fourth line. That's the one thing that has stuck. They have not juggled that at all because that fourth line's been so good, so effective in what they want to do. So that's a positive.
Who gets G going, though? Who gets Claude Giroux going?
I hope they kind of get him back with Hayes. I thought he was pretty good with Hayes. But
Thank you.
Yes, I will say
Thank you, sir. And Hayes plays well with Joel Farabee. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know. But I just know
it could be fun.
The two work together and the other work together. Young Bees are in the cut with the captain and Hollywood Hayes.
Yeah, they were really good in the inter-squad scrimmage. As we remember, they were good in the opener. I will say this. I think when Sean Couturier gets back, I wouldn't hate it if they put him back with G, because those two just always get the best out of each other. Couturier had his breakout season with Giroux on his wing. Claude Giroux had his resurgent 102-point season when he moved to wing and had Couturier center his line. I just think they're really good together. I can see Couturier being kind of the spark. Let's be real. He's always a spark for so many guys. But, Taryn, I wanted to ask you this side topic, and I think Brooke and I are really anxious to know, and I know listeners are anxious to know, how fun has it been with Scott Hartnell?
Oh, yes. I'm so excited to hear about this.
Give us a glimpse of what it's been like with Scott Hartnell so far on pre and
post game. It's so fun. I wish he would say some of the stuff he says in the newsroom, I wish he would say on air.
I was just going to say, he has to have some stories.
Oh, he's got some gems. And, like, every time Jake does something, because obviously they're, like, you know, they play together and stuff, it's like, come on, Jakey, or, you know, and it's just, it's funny. And, no, it's really fun. It's so weird. We had like a 15-minute rehearsal because of marketing stuff. We had to like do a bunch of stuff for marketing the day we were supposed to have a rehearsal. So we didn't get a ton of time to rehearse together, but he's just as easygoing and cool in person as you'd imagine he is. And of course he's got stories out the wazoo and a lot of great insight into, not just what's going on in the league now, but also what's going on in front offices around the league right now, which is cool, because there's actually a lot to that, and it actually does have more impact than people realize on the team and individual players at times. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to get the old war stories of, Scott was with the Flyers from the time I was pretty much all throughout high school. Like Scott, like the prime hockey watching age for me.
Yeah.
Scott was with the Flyers. So it's very surreal to be sitting there chatting with him about what's going on. But yeah, especially even that game that the Flyers did not play well. It's interesting to pick his brain about, for those of you who don't know, when the game ends, the PR team sets a timer for 5 minutes. All of us writers and reporters have to stand outside of the dressing room. The dressing room doors are shut and locked, and they chat about whatever they chat about in there or whatever, and we don't always know what it is. Sometimes when it runs long, you're like, what is going on? That's when they used to award the player of the game helmet, all that stuff. So it's fun because we don't always get insight into those moments, or we get a very watered down version of it. But now it's have like a person in the newsroom where I could just say, all right, if you're Claude Giroux and you just lost this game 6-1, what are you saying in that dressing room right now? And he was like, you don't want to be in that dressing room right now, something like that. And it's very interesting. It's really fun.
That dynamic is so cool. Not only is Scott Hartnell just an excellent analyst, we all know how good, how much he knows about the game, given that he had to be that guy in front of the net and just put the extra work in. He knows the game well, but the dynamic he has, having been teammates with some of these guys, is so cool. So, Taryn, we're jealous that you get to spend time with him off the set, too. We can only imagine the stories. They must be fun. Fans, catch Taryn and Scott Hartnell out on pre- and post-game live every game. It's been a treat to follow so far, so we will enjoy it the rest of the way. Well, Brooke, Destra, thank you so much. As always, fun chatting with you. The Flyers are 3-1-0, so you are all smiles. I know that. Taryn Hatcher, thank you so much as well. We cannot wait to watch you more on pre- and post-game live. And a special
6 p.m. tomorrow.
6 p.m. tomorrow. Taryn Hatcher said it, Eastern time, right there. And Ben Berry, a special thank you, our podcast producer. Thank you as well. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you for listening. This is the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and subscribe, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.